Welcome to GameFellas, the retro to modern gaming podcast, episode 9. We're up to 9. And tonight we have some of the usual suspects. We have Soren and Justin Day, our brothers from the UK.
Hey guys.
Howdy.
And also we have our first, I guess he's at this point he'd be our second featured guest, which would be Greg Johnson.
What up? And aloha.
Yeah, and Greg and Justin are in Hawaii. Greg lives there. Justin is visiting. So we took the opportunity to have Greg on. And if you're not familiar with Greg, his work spans many decades. Starflight, Doki Doki Panic, the Toejam and Earl. Did I say Doki Doki Panic?
Yeah, but I thought you were
Doki
just
Doki
being
Universe. Doki Doki
Yeah.
Universe. Doki Doki Panic was the Super Mario 2 rip-off, right? Yeah, right.
That's right. No, but the Panic on Funkatron and Doki Doki Universe.
Let's give him some other games all around it. He's also responsible for The Legend of Zelda, Super Smash Brothers. I mean, this guy is a living legend.
Done it all.
He's done
all
everything.
of them.
Hey, man, I look at Starflight as the precursor to Mass Effect, man. I mean, he was way ahead of the curve there. So, anyway.
Yeah, in fact, I think you could say, since it was one of the very first games that I'm responsible for all video games. in a way.
Yeah. I mean,
and you're welcome.
Greg's actually in Ready Player One, but you've just got to look really, really hard to find him. Like, really hard.
Yeah, man, Spielberg didn't come to you asking to use Toejam and Earl for Ready Player One?
Not yet, no. But Ernie Klein, I actually have talked to him,
wow.
and he's a fan of Starflight. He invited me out to his house, and I never quite took him up on that. But that was exciting. I know, stupid,
amazing.
Right?
No,
I'm too busy.
That's all right. That's amazing. I didn't know that. Well, that's very cool. Well, yeah, we got Greg on, and thanks so much for being here. We appreciate it. And just a quick story, just for the listeners that don't know this. We're all sitting here because of Greg right now. I met Justin and Soren through Greg at the Toejam and Earl Back in the Groove launch party back in March. And we became fast friends, and on Twitter, I just kind of jokingly said, we should start a podcast, and I think it was Justin or Soren, one of you guys said, let's do it, and so I'm like, okay. And a couple months later, after, hiring someone to do theme music and putting all the crazy video editing together and the audio, getting a producer, blah, blah, here we are. So it's great. So there you have it.
Awesome.
Yeah, man.
Just do it.
Yeah, just do it. Exactly. So, all right, we're going to start off with, like we normally do, with what games we've been playing lately. So, Greg, you being our featured guest today, what have you been playing lately, man?
Oh, I'm sad to say not much. I've been so busy, though. I'm working on a new project here in Hawaii, and also, which is very exciting and demanding, and working on Toejam and Earl still. We're doing updates. We've got another big update that we're going to be releasing very soon with new game modes. And I've got a card game that's kind of a fun social card game that I'm calling Out of Our Shells. We played that, didn't we?
Yeah, we did, yeah.
So I've refined it.
I'm going to have to brag here. We played it with Macaulay Culkin.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Yeah, and that was a blast.
That has a name now.
Yeah, it does. So I'm going to be running a Kickstarter for that, and I was just on the phone this morning with the group that's doing some prototype for a mobile version of it. So I've been like way crazy busy and not having a lot of time to play games that when I'm done at the end of the day, I spend time with my wife and we go walk on the beach or something. But when I do play, I've played a little bit of Dead or Alive 6, DOA 6. Play a lot of that with my son Toma when he's around, and we play Soul Calibur, the new one as well. I like to play those not head to head though, cooperatively. Oddly enough, I'm not.
How do you play Soul Calibur cooperatively?
We put it in the time mode or one of the modes where you have to keep leveling up, and then we just pass the controller back and forth, and we take turns, and we feel like we're on a team trying to.
Okay. Wow. This is going to be great for later on when we get to the co-op topic.
Great. Okay. I'll save that.
Because, one of our other guys, Mark, on the podcast, that's a regular on the podcast, one of our co-hosts, me and him played Soul Calibur the other night, and just beating each other in that game. You know, this super competitive. So yeah, the opposite. But that's amazing that you guys actually play it cooperatively. I never even thought about doing it that way.
Yeah, that's the only way I'll play it actually. But I love it. That's what I've been doing when I've been playing recently. Yeah, not much else.
Okay, cool. Is there anything you can tell us about the project you're working on? I know you've been keeping it hush hush, but what can you tell us, if anything?
Oh, well, I can tell you that it's a dream project for me, something I've been wanting to make for decades, and that it kind of stands outside of the realm of gaming. It's more in the realm of simulation and AI, and I've always been fascinated with the magic of suspension of disbelief in games and people, characters. That's why my studio is called Human Nature Studios, because it's what I've been chasing for decades, and what I think is you just don't find much of in the games industry, and partly because it's really, really hard to do people, to make believable characters that you can interact with, aside from just pointing a gun at them. You know, that's pretty easy to do. So we see a lot of that, but so that's at its core what I'm doing and thinking about these days, and I'm having a lot of fun finally getting to chase after what I've always had kind of cooking in the background. Now I'm focused on it.
Cool. That's great. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we move on to Soren. What you been playing lately, man?
Hey, so I think I know I mentioned this possibly the last time I was on, but one of the times I was on, I started playing Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, which is kind of the spiritual successor to Castlevania Symphony of the Night on PlayStation.
That was the Kickstarted one.
Yes, yeah. So that, over its kind of life cycle, eventually has made it onto basically every platform, and I've just really taken to the Switch version, just, you know, because it's like portable, and I just kind of prefer a lot of things on the Switch. And yeah, I'm just like sticking to that game. It's just, you know, it's a much bigger game than I thought it would be, and it's one of those games where, although there's a lot to do and you could potentially kind of get lost or find yourself stuck, like I seem to just, I mean, this is obviously down to the development of the game, like they knew what they were doing, but you kind of, you know, you get to a point where you think, oh, I can't really go any further, like I don't know where to go now, but then you're like, oh, well, hang on, I can now do like a double jump, or I can now turn the world upside down or something, so I know there's now another door that I can now access that I couldn't before, and it just really nicely kind of opens new parts to the world out to you as you play. And yeah, I haven't even completed it yet. Like I've still just been grinding through and kind of like searching out all the secrets and like leveling up, and you know, I still haven't actually completed it in the sense of getting the good ending, which is to fully complete the game. So I've mostly been sticking to that, which is an amazing game. But other than that, if I kind of don't want to spend a whole evening like getting really stuck into something, and I just want to kind of spend, you know, an hour or so on something small, I've actually got into a couple of games. One is called, I think it's called Domina, on Steam, which is like a pixel art, like gladiator kind of management game. It's really quite simple, and you just kind of like you're running, I think it's called a ludus, which is where, you know, you'd put on your gladiator fights, and you're running that ludus and kind of training up people to be gladiators, and then hiring people to go and do other bits and other jobs in your ludus, and it's very much that kind of like sim management style game.
Is this a Switch game also?
No, so it's not on Switch, but definitely would love it to be, so just put that out there. No, it's on Steam at the minute. I think it's only on PC.
What's it called again?
It's called Domina, which is Domina. For some reason, and this actually might come up in a future episode, for some reason it's got a really metal soundtrack.
Oh, does it?
Yeah,
nice.
Really kind of like slightly retro-y, you know, it's almost like metal, but they've done it in a retro way. but yeah, it's really cool.
That's not surprising. Actually, it seems like it would really fit gladiators.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
right?
actually, yeah, that
It
probably
really
is
does,
great.
and it's got that whole the kind of thing of like, I don't know what they call it. It might be rogue. It might be part of roguelike, but it's got that whole thing of like if you train a gladiator up and you put him in combat and he gets beaten, like most of the time he's going to die. So you've then lost that gladiator. Like you don't, he doesn't like come back to your place afterwards. It's like, no, if he surrenders and the other guy doesn't accept his surrender and he just kills him, like you've lost that gladiator that you've been training up for, like all year. So it's got that kind of permadeath type thing to it as well.
Is this like a retro styled game or is it a newer?
Yeah, but it's it's very much done in kind of like a pixel art style.
Okay.
It's really, really quite fun. Like definitely something you can just dip into as well. But other than that, the other one I've been playing that you can very much kind of just dip into is a game called Kingdom New Lands. Don't know if anyone has heard of this.
Nope.
I think it is basically available on everything, like even to the point where I think you can get it on your phone. But it's basically a kind of a kingdom builder type game. But you can only, like, you're on a, it's 2D side scrolling, so you're on a 2D plane. So you can only move left and right. And you basically do everything with one button. So you're just running back and forth and kind of collecting taxes and finding treasure chests and building your gold supply up. And then you can stop at various points on the map and build more bits to your kingdom just by pressing the button. And it'll cost a certain amount of gold coins to do each particular upgrade. And you're just working your way to basically rebuilding your ship so that you can leave this island and then move on to the next kingdom and then try and, win at that one. And it's got that the kind of day-night cycle thing of like during the day you're fine and you're doing your management sim bit, and then at night you'll get like these kind of weird creatures from another dimension will like come and try and attack your castle, so you've got to build up your defenses as well. But it's just a really nice kind of simple game that you can just play without really putting too much thought into, because you're just kind of, you're literally just pressing left, right, and the A button, like, because I play it on the Switch. So it's really easy to control, but like there's actually quite a few layers of depth to it, which is quite nice.
And say the name of that one again.
So that one is called Kingdom New Lands, which is actually, to be honest, the old one. Like I think the whatever their newer game is, I think that came out this month, but very recently. So I picked up the other one because that was on sale, and
you said it's basically on everything. You think PC and
PS4. I've definitely seen it on Steam. I've got it on Switch, and I know it's on the App Store as well on iPhone. So
did you get a physical copy of it?
No, I actually I got it off the Nintendo store because it was like it was about £3 to £4 on the Nintendo store, which is about $5, which is an absolute steal for this game. No, I'd love the physical one, which I know there is a physical version out there for Switch, but it was like a limited run or something. So
Okay.
But yeah, highly advise all the games I've just mentioned there. Like they're really, really good.
So a lot of Switch. That's all. It seems like when people, a lot of people that get a Switch, that's like all they play. They play, get everything they can on their Switch.
Well, I think for me, it's just, okay, there are some occasions where you're sacrificing a bit on the graphics, but having that added ability of not only just playing this when I'm sitting at home on my couch, but the fact that, I can just take it out with me, like if I go on a train journey or if I, I'm just going into the city or whatever, and I know I'm going to have a bit of time where I'm waiting around, like having that is perfect, that combination. So, if something comes out and it's on everything, I will buy the Switch version. Yeah.
That's usually how I am, unless it's a big AAA release that I want big, nice graphics. Yeah, if it's an indie title, man, it's going on Switch for sure.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
All right, cool. Thanks, Soren. Let's move on to Justin. What have you been playing lately, man? What did you play on the long plane flight to Maui?
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of hours to work with to get here. I think it's about 17, 18. So yeah, it's a decent long haul. No, I mean, I kind of, I tipped you guys off last time. I said once I get invested in an RPG, that's it. Goodbye time.
Yep.
So I'm still on Xenoblade's Chronicles 2.
Okay.
Just getting deeper and deeper into that story. I am loving it even more as I'm playing it, which is interesting because I kind of, I don't know, I was still kind of keeping the jury out a little bit. I think it was a really solid game and I was enjoying it, but it's quickly becoming even better. And I'm starting to understand more why people are quite, I don't know, they sort of hold it up and herald it as, something really, really big and really quite special. And then yesterday in the Nintendo Direct, they announced that Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition will be coming to the Switch, and that's actually what they ended the Direct on. So it shows you how important that series is, or how important Nintendo perceives that series is to its fan base and to its customer base. So yeah, I feel like I'm in good company. But outside of that, I'm kind of been playing games that I've been forced to play, and by forced, I don't mean because I dislike them, because they're actually two really good games. Although I know one would send Zach to sleep, and one is a classic. But this is, and it kind of plays nicely into our topic that's coming up. But this is because these are the games that Billy is playing, and if Billy, that's my son, is playing those and he wants me to get engaged, then obviously I have to play them. He doesn't want to sit and watch me playing Xenoblade Chronicles.
How old is he?
Billy's 8.
Okay. Good age.
So those two games are Super Smash Brothers. That one goes round and round and round. And yes, yeah. As in,
okay.
And what's disturbing is he's quite good at it, and he's now better than I am. I'll get my ass kicked.
Sorry to interrupt, but I noticed on the Toejam and Earl Twitter today that someone did a mock-up of the new player arrives thing, and they had Toejam and Earl silhouettes there.
Yeah.
Did you see that, Greg?
No, I haven't seen it yet. Matt mentioned it to me. But yeah, I want to get on there and kind of give it a bump because.
Yeah, Greg, I asked you about this on that interview years ago. I think it was one of the questions was, what do you think about
Yeah, same answer as then.
It's up to Sega. It's basically up to Sega, right? And
no, it's not.
Okay.
I've told me and Mark Borsanger own the IP.
That's right. Yeah, you guys own it. Okay.
So yeah, if they're into it and they want it, then yeah, by all means, we'd be totally into it.
Okay. There you go. This is a public appeal directly to Smash.
There we go.
Yeah, let's do it.
Come get it. You know it.
I mean, they're adding characters from what was the character they added the other day? Some character nobody cares about. It's like Fatal Fury character. It's like what?
Actually, I thought
Toejam was way better known than Fatal Fury, man. Mark might disagree with me, but
Mark wouldn't. Of course he would. So me and Mark have already had this conversation. Yeah. So when they did the reveal for the character, so basically, do you know the game Metal Slug?
No.
This is excellent news.
He doesn't know Metal Slug?
No. Why would he need to know Metal Slug? It's rubbish.
You're right. Yeah, you're right.
Basically, this is a game that's kind of heralded by many as a classic. And I don't.
You've heard of SNK though, right?
It's Greg? Yeah. You've heard of SNK.
Company SNK?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Of course. Mm-hmm. All right.
It's one of their flagship games.
I see.
But if you saw the Nintendo Direct reveal, me and Soren were laughing about this as it was happening. It kind of revealed, you knew that the new character for Smash was going to be a Neo Geo character. And it was teasing all these different characters kind of trying to grab this invite to become the next character on the game. And they kept missing it. And I thought, oh no, it's going to be Metal Slug. Can you imagine? I would have just shut up shop for the rest of eternity. A bit of that. And the one that would send you to sleep, of course, Zach, is FIFA.
Oh, okay, yeah. I already did that when Soren said he was playing FIFA.
Yeah, so bit of FIFA
in your football games.
Proper football. So
Although actually, have you been playing it on the Switch?
Yeah, we got so basically we got FIFA 19 because now FIFA 20 has come out. FIFA 19, the price just went for dunk and plummeted. So I've actually bought me and Billy a physical copy each so that we can because we're quite tragic. So I'll play from one end of the house and he'll play the other end. Obviously. So
you guys have two Switches?
2 Switches, yeah.
Okay. You're like me and my brother when we were kids. We had 2 Game Gears when we were kids. The only person that had a Game Gear, much less 2 Game Gears. Wait, we had 3 Game Gears. My sister had one too.
Oh, that is amazing.
My uncle bought all 3. Yeah, he spoiled us. He bought us all 3. The uncle that, anyway, continue, man.
Yeah. So we've been playing that as well. Football's a big part of his life. And now he's got into FIFA. So now, like most children in the United Kingdom, he probably won't play anything else for the next 10 years. So that's it. Goodbye video games. It's
so
now
tragic.
FIFA. Yeah. So now I'll make sure he remains educated. But in video games, I mean, not maths and English. So that's kind of it. There's nothing else. I'm kind of. It's almost an incentive to complete Xenoblades, though, is that I can play some other games so I can come back and talk about them.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And moving on to me, I'm in the same boat. I'm going to sound like a broken record here, but all I've been playing is No Man's Sky. The game came out 3 years ago, and they just keep making it better and better and better. And I love it so much. Soren can attest. Soren, have you tried it in VR at all? Have you been playing in VR since they? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell me a little bit about that? Since I'm not playing it in VR, but what's it like?
It is as crazy as you would think it is. I know you've said that you're one of the people where VR kind of makes you a bit sick and that, but I'm kind of pretty much at the point where I'm absolutely fine with VR. I think that the benchmark to see if you're okay with VR is to try and play Wipeout. Like, if you can play Wipeout in VR, then you're probably all right with the motion sickness.
Okay.
But yeah, on No Man's Sky, I got to try it out on the PC version using an Oculus Rift.
Oh, okay, cool.
But it is just, it's not perfect, okay? It's definitely not perfect. Sometimes the control can be a little bit janky, or it has 1 or 2 little issues. But in general, it is very playable. It's absolutely fine. It's enjoyable. It does kind of change the way that you play as well, because you have to physically do things. So if you want to get your gun out, you have to reach and actually grab it from your back.
That's cool. Yeah. So you actually have to mime out some of the things that you game.
And if you want to access menus and stuff, you literally have to look at your arm and then kind of press stuff on here, and it will bring up a menu, and it just little things
like a sci-fi movie. Yeah, that's really
it's just loads of nice little things, like getting in and out of a ship. You pull yourself into the ship, and then if you want to get out of it, you literally have to grab these kind of green bars and that, and then lift the cockpit open to get out. And obviously all of those are different based on what ship you have, because there's tons of different ships.
What's it like walking up to a big animal you find on a planet? Have you found one of those big dinosaur type critters?
No. I haven't found anything massive. Although I imagine it'll be similar to when I played VR in Skyrim, where when I first tried VR in Skyrim, and I kind of went just past the first city you go to, and there's a little encampment of a couple of giants and some mammoths, and I was firing some arrows and accidentally hit one of the mammoths, and it came charging towards me. And it's literally I was like, oh wow, right, okay. It was huge. Okay. So yeah, VR is really cool for that.
That's cool. Yeah. Unfortunately, it's probably not something I'll ever try in No Man's Sky. I might try it, but if I have the opportunity. But yeah, the game's great. Greg, have you played No Man's Sky? Have you tried it at any point, or no?
Some, but not recently.
Okay,
it seems when it first came out.
It seems like it's the type of game you'd enjoy, I think, or at least enjoy messing around in it, and just and there is cooperative play. Me and my friend Donald played it extensively, cooperatively for about 3 or 4 months last year when Next came out. So
yeah, I could definitely see it being top of my interest list if I had the bandwidth and the time to.
Yeah, it is. It is a time sink, and but anyway, it's great. I won't say anything more about it because talk about on every show. So we'll move on to our first topic, which is a very appropriate one for Greg, I think, as we said, which is co-op gaming, or I guess we're going to talk about the resurgence of co-op gaming, because it seems like it's making a big comeback, both in couch co-op type experiences like Toejam and Earl was years ago, and still is today with the new Toejam and Earl game, and online co-op, which it seems like even like, for instance, I'm playing through Divinity Original Sin 2, which is an expansive RPG, single player RPG. Me and my buddy have been playing through it for about 6 months together. You know, we play once a week, one night a week. We pick a night, we play for 3-4 hours, and you play through the entire game together online, and it's like you're playing together in the same room. So more and more games seem to be implementing that. I wrote a little something here I'll read just to prep people for this, but it could be argued that video games were created with the multiplayer experience in mind. Even Pong, one of the first arcade games, was playable by multiple people together, even though it was kind of a more competitive type game. But the first co-op game, I researched this, but said the first co-op game ever was a game called Fire Truck, which was in the arcade, where two people would steer the truck. There was a guy in front who would put the brakes in the gas and steer the front of the truck, and the person behind him had another steering wheel, and they would steer the back. And I guess the whole point was just to drive without crashing. And I want to see a video of someone playing that game. I've never seen it, but it sounds like it'd be pretty funny. It's people trying to cooperate to steer the fire truck. It sounds kind of fun. So fast forward to 2019, and co-op gaming is pretty commonplace, both online and locally. But we didn't always have this embarrassment of riches. Many single-player games now feature co-op mode, like I was talking about, allowing gamers to play together on the same screen or online. And the possibilities seem endless nowadays. I mean, I know that for a fact that, the new Toejam and Earl, for instance, one of the things that made the game take longer than you anticipated was the online co-op functionality. Am I right, Greg? Is that one of the things that I know it's a super complicated thing to implement? So what do you think? What do we think about all this? We'll let Greg start off, and maybe you can tell us about your experience creating a game like this. And obviously the original Toejam and Earl, which was honestly one of the first dynamic split-screen games I think ever made, really.
Yeah, well, you just said a bunch of things and asked a few different questions.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. That's all good. We can kind of run down the list. That's maybe starting at the back. Absolutely, yes. Did it make the game take longer to do the online component? That would be the understatement of the decade. It like tripled the amount of time that it took in. And I don't even know what the multiplier would be on the complexity of it. It was a huge job, undertaking, much more than we thought it was going to be. I'm not sorry we did it because, like you were saying, and with your story about playing with your friend online, that's something I believe in, just in general. But in regards to Toejam and Earl in particular, there are so many of the Toejam and Earl fans have it's funny. I'm talking to the total choir here. Have memories, right, that stretch way back to their childhood of playing with particular people that they would like to play again with and reconnect with. That's why we did it, and went through all of the pain and suffering that it took to try to get it done and squeeze out more and more of a budget to keep going so we could make it work, because it felt so important to let all these people who had played with their friends or their family when they were little and now live on opposite sides of the country or different countries even play together. So I'm glad we did that. And in regards to co-op in general and couch co-op versus online co-op or just co-op in general, you got me pegged already. You already know.
You were talking about playing Soul Calibur cooperatively, which kind of blew my mind because I never thought about playing a game that is so competitive like that cooperatively. That's crazy.
Right. Or like I used to play one of the games. I think I've probably put I'd say the games I've put the most hours into, which is a fun question actually for everybody to answer. I'd love to hear each of your answers to that question. But the games I've poured the most hours into would be World of Tanks, and Age of Empires, probably more than anything. Those two more than anything else, and then maybe DOA if you count all the different versions of it lined up.
So wait a minute, you play DOA cooperatively also?
Yeah, right. That's how I like to play it.
Okay.
And we could talk more about that. But I played Age of Empires cooperatively too. It was funny. There was this weird. I don't even know if they did that intentionally, but I found out that you could, two people could control the same city, and so I used to play with my wife, where we would, I would run off, make armies, and run off and attack the other villages, while she liked to, manage resources. She was much more efficient than I was at that, and manage the town. And didn't want to have anything to do with the fighting. Anyway, I think it sort of speaks. There's all kinds of ways you can look at the question of co-op. A lot of them have to do with how you implement it and what the issues are in terms of that, and what makes for a good co-op experience. But there's a whole other avenue to look at, which is kind of a deeper one of why. Why co-op, and why do we play games at all? What do we get out of it? And of course, that's a very personal question we each have different answers to. But
we are social animals inherently, I think, and I think that's the reason why. Like you said, I think the game I've put the most time into, and I'm kind of ashamed to admit it, is the original Halo, and it's because, and it was playing with friends over. We would bring, and a lot of guys did this in college, my age, which is you would bring a bunch of TVs over to your friend's place, hook up 4 Xboxes all together, and just play Halo, with 8, 10, 12 people, and it just, I probably put, I don't know, just hundreds, thousands of hours into that game. It was ridiculous. And, there's other games.
When was that? How far back?
2001, 2002, when I was in college. So, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It was a
Oh,
while ago.
yeah. Star Control Melee with Paul Ritchie. Paul and Fred made, Star Control, and I don't know how many hours I played that too. If we want to go way back, I don't know how far we want to dial back. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, if you want to go way back, obviously the original Toejam and Earl, hundreds, thousands of hours into that over the last 30 years. What else? The original Life Force, the game called Life Force on the NES. It was a spaceship shooter you could play together cooperatively, and I still play that game to this day on occasion. One of our other guys, Tony, who's on the podcast a lot, he came and visited me a couple months ago, and we busted out Life Force. Got to play that. Got to play the the classics. So yeah, it's cooperative play. Now that you mention, it really is probably the most memorable for most gamers, I think.
Well, I mean, something that is kind of interesting is the fact that like you mentioned a minute ago about that it is kind of a natural thing for us. Like, we want to be in the same room and actually hang out with other people and play games and do activities and that. It's not all about online. And I think something that totally proves that is, Justin, you'll remember this from us growing up. You would play single player RPGs, and I'd be happy to sit there and watch. Yeah, I basically watched you play the entirety of Final Fantasy VII. I never picked up the controller. I just watched and kind of enjoyed seeing it because I was experiencing the story as well and getting to experiencing it with my brother. So it's like
I had the same experience with Final Fantasy VII. Oh, exactly the same.
Nice. It was Final Fantasy VIII for me. I watched my brother play through Final Fantasy VIII. I never touched it. Same thing.
And likewise, interestingly, a game I always hold up as a game I watched Soren play in entirety. I have never played it myself. Is Grand Theft Auto 3, which was a massive step forward from that series. Soren played it. I didn't. I've never played it, but I know that game intricately because I saw him play it. So it's I totally agree with that.
Yeah, Star Control 2, a game that Greg didn't make, but he had a hand in. was another game that I didn't play much as growing up. I played it years later, but I watched my brother play most of it, you know, and it was just so much fun to just to watch, see what he was doing and what aliens he was going to meet, you know, next, and well, go here or go there, you know. Yeah, it's interesting that single player games can be cooperative experiences, even if one person isn't controlling anything. There's a game called Inside that came out a couple of years ago. Really good, kind of dark and bleak, but it's very much like that game Out of This World, or I think it was called Another World over there and over across the pond over there. You know what game I was talking about. Inside is just a fantastic game, kind of like that. It's a puzzle platformer type game with a really atmospheric, dark ambiance. But my wife, who doesn't play many games, she sat and watched me play the entire thing from start to finish, you know, because it was that interesting to watch. And, you know, she was telling me, do this, do that, you know, be careful. So yeah, it's interesting. But shifting a topic a little, I think there was maybe a drought, maybe it was in the mid 2000s or something, where there was less co-op gaming going on. And it seems to be making a comeback now, like we said, both online and couch co-op. What do you guys think? What do you think is the reason for that? Just technology improving, or?
Well, I mean, I'll have a go at that. I think the internet has a lot to answer for that, and it's the same with anything new that comes along. You know, you approach something in one way, and then you invariably use it in a different way. I think what the internet opened up was this sort of, you know, because if you think the time scales you've just given there is where online gaming started becoming more of a thing. I think it's an exciting new time. You're trying something new. The ability to still play with others, or to try something new, but they're not with you. So it was almost like a form of, I suppose, the new form of cooperative gaming. I mean, by cooperative, I suppose I'm twisting the word a bit. Cooperative in that there are other people within the game world that you're playing in, but you might still be vaguely competitive. And I think that what's happening there is people becoming more accepting of sitting, you know, at home and playing with others, knowing that they've got access to those. But if you rip it back to just pure one player, I think another thing as well is you look at the actual general timeline of when video games popularity kind of hit. You know, you could say 80s, but let's take the 90s. You know, a lot of the kids that were growing up, let's take me and Soren, great example, we're brothers, right? So we have no option. Okay, we don't have the funds to go and buy a Mega Drive each or a SNES each or whatever. So we have to play together. You come to 2000 and you know, between 2000 and 2005, you've got the likes of me and Soren, and then between the ages of 18 and 24, this is when people are leaving home, but video games are still a big thing for that age group, who wasn't as much of an age group if you go back 15 years, and they don't have their brother sitting next to them. They don't have someone with them. And I think that's why there's that bit of the rise. You know, you've got that kind of cross between when people are kind of moving out of that natural ability or natural, you know, way of they're going to play games because they are at home. They've left home. The internet's a new thing. And I think now that's all spun all the way through, where the internet has matured to a point where people are now going back to an advanced cooperative gaming. I mean, I think that sounded incredibly clever.
I agree with all that.
Right, man. Yeah.
I have another point of view to offer too. That's kind of from a developer's perspective, because as you guys know, you said decades. That was actually nice and graceful, because I've actually started making games in '82, I think. So I don't know what that is, 36 years or something.
Yeah, almost as long as I've been alive. Good job. Probably longer than. Wait, Justin, you're 36, right?
I was born in 1982, so I don't want Greg feeling bad. Don't remember, video games are only a period.
I've come to terms. That's okay. But you know, I've been making games through all of these different phases, and of course, I've been a game player and a game consumer, and there are things that drive what the market does based on where people's heads are at and what other technologies like the internet are available and all that. But there's other forces at work from the developer side, and the bottom line there is what can you get money to make? You know, what are the people who are paying for these games funding? And that through the early 2000s was everybody was racing for graphics and technology to make their games look and sound, but mostly look amazing with the development of 3D and the internet and the whole indie game movement and mobile gaming didn't really exist yet. So there was just one channel for funding games, and the people who were funding the games weren't really interested in co-op games, and co-op adds work. It adds its time and money to your schedule and budget. And when your priority is just we have to compete with the other really shiny games that are coming out. That was the mandate, you know, for quite a number of years.
Well, look at Toejam and Earl 3. I mean, in terms of graphics and everything, it was a quantum leap forward from 2, you know, this crazy, huge 3D world. And yeah, I mean, it was on the Xbox, and the game looked, I thought, for a time, really good. So I guess you were kind of pushed into what you're saying. You're saying all this, and I'm thinking Toejam and Earl 3, like, you guys kind of had to try and compete with that whole thing in that time.
Yeah, but even that's a fine example. You know, we actually started, and when we were building for the Dreamcast, we had, as you probably remember, Zach, we had online co-op working, right? And we pulled that out when we moved over to the Xbox. Of course, we couldn't pull out couch co-op because it's Toejam and Earl, right? It wouldn't work. But yeah, our emphasis shifted, and that was in part due to the fact that our publisher was saying, we don't care about that.
Right.
We here's what we want and what we'll pay for. But then now this decade with you know, with the whole indie movement and there's a whole bunch of things that fuel the indie movement, right? With people being connected on the internet and with you know, having tools like Unity, especially Unity, but Unity and Unreal and all kinds of tools, and making game development more accessible to people and having avenues for people to sell their own games on Steam and you know, and then just a general interest in maybe that having to do with the age that people are and where their heads are at, and all of that has driven a movement that has allowed more room for co-op play, because when you're building without big money behind you, you can make your own choices, and a lot of individual developers have decided to prioritize that more, because those are the game experiences that they want to play.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, because of the whole indie scene now, you can do whatever you want, like you said, as long as you can, you know, get the funding for it, or, you know, the blood, sweat, and tears that it takes to make these games.
Yeah.
Do you think Back in the Groove would have happened without Kickstarter, without fan funding? You know.
Not a chance. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's all connected. You know, I was trying to find a way to fund it for a long time before that, and was unsuccessful.
Yeah.
And
because it's not what the big publishers wanted, like you said.
Yeah. Right. And you know, you dive into a project and you got to survive, and you build, and then you come out at the end of it, and then you have a window of time where you're trying to figure out what you're doing next, and you go looking for money. And it was those times where I would try pitching Toejam and Earl again, having no luck, and then I'd find something that I could get funded to do, and then dive back in, and then I'm kind of gone for another year or two before I can try again. So I had these periods where I was trying to get it off the ground, and then finally it seemed like crowdfunding and Kickstarter was you know, was the shot we would take, a way to make it happen.
Right.
Yeah.
But there's definitely been, definitely been a resurgence. And I think, even some of the bigger publishers are probably taking notice at this point. I got a list of some games I was thinking of. The one that comes to mind for me most recently, it's not a game that's out yet, but it's Streets of Rage 4 is actually happening. Sega basically hired an indie studio to do it. I think Lizard Cube is the name of the company. I believe they're an indie studio. And it's looks and plays and feels just like a old co-op Streets of Rage game. It's fantastic. And that's a perfect example of, I think this new mindset kind of made Sega think, well, okay, we haven't touched this franchise in 25 years. Why don't we try, and give it a shot and give these guys some money and let them make their game,
Zach, are they Are they the guys that also did Wonder Boy?
Yes, they are.
Right. So they've got some old sort of Sega franchising as well.
Yep.
Okay. I thought I recognized the name.
Yeah, I mean, they got Yuzo Koshiro to come back for some of the music, and they got
Nice.
it's like getting the team back together, sort of to get the game. So that's really cool. Another one is Cuphead, which I've talked about pretty extensively already because I love it. It's just a fantastic game. Fantastic. It's better in co-op mode when you're playing together, I think. My brother and I and my friend Donald and I have spent quite a bit of time playing Cuphead, and it's just brutally difficult, but great co-op experience. There's obviously Minecraft, which we've talked about. You can play that cooperatively, and this, your imagination is the limit there. For games like Minecraft. Terraria is another one that I've spent. Talk about another game where you're kind of ashamed to talk about how much time you put into it. Terraria is one for me that I've spent, probably, I don't know, 500, 600, 700 hours in, over the years. What else?
Zach, what I think is kind of interesting is, we kind of touched on it a little bit. There were definite eras of game development where, like Greg was saying, that developers were kind of aiming for a particular thing. So, you had that initial rush of, we want our game to look better than everyone else's because we're on the cusp of technology. We can have better 3D models. We can have better this, better that. Like, you had that little kind of run, and then that started to peter out as we got to a point where it's like, well, games all kind of, they can all look phenomenal, but you can't really get them looking better than that. Like we've kind of caught up with technology. So then the kind of rush was, or like partly at the same time, was the whole, well, now my game is online, or like, okay, well, now my game is online and up to 8 people can play together, or, oh, look, now I've got a first-person shooter and 32 people can be in a lobby and all fight each other, and you just that was then the next goal to kind of head towards. But I think we've got to a point where it's not necessarily a given, because obviously not every game gives you this ability, but because there are so many games out there and we can have any game we want. Like if you want a game where you can play with hundreds and hundreds of other people, there's hundreds and hundreds to pick from. If you want a game that looks amazing, like literally looks like you've got real people stepping through your TV, there are hundreds to pick from. So we've got all of these choices. There's not really something to kind of aim for in to kind of be the best, apart from to have the best game, just the one that's the most fun. So I think that's where, you've got your things like Cuphead, and you've got, like your Terraria and your Minecraft, and just all these kind of games where it's like, they don't look, they haven't got the hundreds and £1 million, budgets to make these ridiculously good-looking mocaps like things. It's like, just in Cuphead's case, a really unique art style, or just giving people a nice, like really good gameplay, or the ability to do couch co-op, or just these other little features that now people are getting excited about, and that's what attracts them, and kind of in part is why, like when Greg wanted to try and bring Toejam and Earl back, it's like, that's the perfect time, because people don't, they're not looking at it and wanting super realistic graphics or something. They're wanting something that, gives them that nostalgia feel, gives them the couch co-op. It's just fun to play. It's a good game. So that's why a lot of these indie games are now kind of, hitting the top of the pile and are becoming really popular. Like I don't think people care as much about graphics and that as much as they used to.
Yeah, it's just the resurgence of we've talked about this before, retro-looking titles with pixel art, as an example of that. Now they're doing games in the PS1 big polygon style, because why not? I mean, they're just gonna, it really doesn't matter. But one thing I have noticed too is that even AAA, these $100 million games you're talking about, even some of those are incorporating co-op now, where more than one person can play through a campaign together. I mean, a good example, and this was an older example, but Halo, the original Halo and Halo 2, you could play cooperatively together. My brother and I, that was a lot of what we did was we just played through the game together, in legendary mode, the hardest difficulty, and just kept going and going until we beat it, and it was fun playing together and cooperating to finish it, so yeah, it's pretty cool. So okay,
I think there's a lot, like, I mean, I know that I'm very aware of the fact that I do often talk about Nintendo Switch to the point where I feel like I'm a spokesman for Nintendo, but like, to me, the Switch is the perfect example of, like, how this whole industry has changed and what people do want, because the Switch is not winning any of the graphical competitions. Like, it is the most underpowered machine out of all of these next gen machines, but it's massively popular. It's like outselling everything phenomenally, like especially over in Japan and places like that. Like, it's, I think the Switch shows that people don't, they don't care about necessarily fancy graphics or anything like that. They just want something that is fun, something that is really, has great usability and brings back things like couch co-op. And if you look at the Switch, that more so than any other, whether it be the other consoles or PC, so often if something comes out on Switch, it's geared around getting your friends together, getting your siblings together and just having fun.
Yeah.
And it's the Switch is just doing phenomenally well. So
to where games like Witcher 3 are being ported now. Overwatch was just announced. I mean, all these big AAA games are being ported to the Switch and down res. They're deports basically because they have to down res everything. It's crazy, but
but don't underestimate that. That's predominantly because Nintendo is an absolute marketing machine. I highly doubt that The Witcher 3 is suddenly going to become an 8-person party game. So I don't think we can kind of cross the streams here. The reason The Witcher's coming to Nintendo is pure play money, baby. That's all it's about. It's a whole load of new sales. But,
that's true.
But the Nintendo Switch is definitely well more geared for that. I think there's still an element of, if I'm going to be slightly cynical on that, and I'm a Switch guy now, completely. Everything, I'm the same as Soren, everything I do is Switch. How often do I actually undock my Switch? Hardly ever.
You're like
when I come on a 17-hour flight to Hawaii, that's totally legit. Otherwise, I don't really do it. How often do I get loads of Joy-Cons out? And do you know what? Truthfully, only when Soren comes around. To me, it's not that, but I totally get where you're coming from. It's well more geared for that. I think there's lots of stuff there, and I mean, we could probably go on about this for ages. I mean, one of the original things as well, I was just going to just say something as well about bringing multiplayer games and co-op games into the sort of 8 and 16-bit era. Another reason for that is that a lot of the games were coming from the arcades and the arcade ports, and the reason that a lot of the arcade games that you had after the original Space Invaders and things like that were 2-player was to get more quarters in the machine. It wasn't anything to do with co-op. That was to get more money in the machine, and then the port had to come to the 8 and 16-bit, and things started doing that. So there was there's a sort of a cynical side to it as well. But
I wonder if the fire truck game I was talking about, the original co-op game, I wonder if there was 2 coin slots, one for the back and one for the front. There might have been.
I bet there was. If there's two players.
I'm thoroughly looking forward to finding any video footage of this thing. I think it's going to be amazing. If we find it, we're playing it. I don't care where it is on the planet.
I will find it, and I will insert it into the video version of the podcast, during the segment. All right.
I have one more comment, but I don't know how long you want to stay on this topic, so feel free to cut me off.
You can wrap it up with this one, and we'll move on.
Okay. Just a quick thought. Because of the, you look at the arc of games, the style of games that people have been playing and selling and the market. And one of the things I feel like I've seen is a saturation, in terms of, and you guys, I bet you've had the same experience when you go to game shows year after year after year. And after doing that for quite a number of years, you always feel like you're on a search for something new. Right? You stop looking at the graphics and you stop looking at the tech and you start looking for some new gameplay mechanic. You're looking for deeper innovation. And that's one of the reasons why I think co-op play has also had a resurgence, is because it's one of those things in the palette of innovation that hasn't really been explored very much. You know, it wasn't for a long time. And so now people who are looking to do something new and different and interesting can find new ways to leverage co-op as a, you know, as an interesting area for new kinds of gameplay. So
yeah,
I think that has something to do with the age of the game industry and where it's sort of, you know, evolved to, and now people are looking for something in general, something deeper and newer.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. All right. Well, thanks for beautifully wrapping that up, Greg. I appreciate it. Now we will take a short break, and when we come back, we will get on to our next topic. We're back to discuss our second topic, which is review bombing and unhelpful reviews. There's actually two sides of the story that we'll get into. I believe it's split up into the positive and negative aspects of it, because believe it or not, there are some positive things that happen. So, you know, we've all seen this done before. Basically, a decision is made by a gaming company about their game, such as usually lately it's been about exclusivity deals, right? So, you know, I think Soren mentioned Astral Chain it's a Nintendo Switch exclusive developed by Platinum Games, which is Platinum owned by Nintendo? They're like a second party.
No, yeah, I think they're
party
they're
type.
basically second party, yeah.
Right, so that's the latest thing, is Astral Chain has been review bombed. Games like Mass Effect 3 were review bombed because people didn't like the ending. Even Skyrim, I think, was review bombed at one point because they had that idea about they were going to start charging for mods. People didn't like it, so they review bombed the game. I think Chinese players review bombed, this I didn't realize, review bombed Sonic Mania to protest DRM that was in the game, which was kind of interesting, which I didn't know about. So anyway, those are just a handful of reasons why people do it. But why do you think this is happening? Is this just the way that we operate in the 21st century? Just deep division, political division in games, movies, you know, pop culture? What do you think? Soren, you came up with the topic, so why don't you start us off?
So, yeah, I mean, I think to look at the kind of negative side of it first, this kind of kind of bleeds into something that I know me and Justin have spoken about before, which is this idea of, well, I want it, so and you're telling me I can't have it. Like, you don't necessarily deserve it. Like, it's not your absolute right to have something. So, you know, the fact that like Astral Chain is getting review bombed, or admittedly, like, I don't think it's entirely getting it because of this, but you know, if you look at the reviews and everything, it's coming out as like 9 out of 10s and like perfect, and it's clearly a phenomenal game, but it's getting review bombed by, you know, a handful of people that are just really annoyed that it's a Nintendo Switch exclusive. And it's like, you know, yeah, okay, I understand that's frustrating if you don't have a Switch, but at the same time, you've got two options. You can either go and buy a Switch, or you can play one of the thousands of other games that are out there. Like, you're not, you know, it's not like you're limited to a couple of games and one of them's off limits because you don't own the console. No, there are literally hundreds and thousands of games. So it's not really that big of a deal. Like, I think it's very much an entitlement thing to why, you know, something like that is getting review bombed. But the flip side of it, which can also have a negative, is when people are too positive about a game. Because, you know, I've genuinely seen in the past, and some specific examples are escaping me at the minute, but I know I've seen this before, where a game will suddenly have like a 10 out of 10 review, and it's not even out yet. It's just somebody that's really, you know, a big fan of the franchise or whatever it is, and they're like, you know, oh yeah, this next one is going to be amazing, it's 10 out of 10. It's like, well, you haven't even played it yet. Like, and you're, admittedly, by your own admission, you're going to be biased. Like,
Shills.
Fan. Like, you know, so I think, but where that runs the risk is, you know, not only are you then kind of technically reviewing something that you haven't even tried, But if you overhype it too much, all of these people who aren't necessarily like the biggest fan of that franchise, and they're just coming in as somebody that's like, you know, they're just hearing about a game because it's getting a lot of rave reviews, and they're like, oh, okay, cool, I didn't know about this franchise, I'll go and check it out. They're expecting like the holy grail. Do you know what I mean? Like with some of these reviews, they're expecting like the best game ever, and it's not that it's a bad game. Like, it could very well be a good game, but because it's been overhyped, it then falls flat to them, and then has, you know, the flip, you know, the reverse effect of what those initial reviewers were actually trying to achieve.
Don't you think it's strange that sites like Metacritic allow you to review a game before it's out? Like, shouldn't there be like a lock on that or something, you would think?
So I'm not, I obviously I check Metacritic every now and again, but I'm not completely up on like what their rules are and their regulations. But I think there is something on there, at the very least. I think there is a gap between when actual I don't know what you'd call them, but like the actual professional critics and reviews and things come out, and then when user ones can be put out. I think there's like a good week difference between those.
It's like with Rotten Tomatoes, to use an example for movies anyway. I think it's before a movie's out, there's a thing that says, you know, excited to see or whatever, and there's a percentage. But then once it comes out, they have user reviews, and it's a different percentage. You know, you'd think they would do that with a lot of these other ones. I mean, Borderlands 3 was getting review bombed on Steam, and it's not even out yet. They were pissed off about the Epic Store exclusivity deal, you know? So another example where it's like, okay, you know, just wait to play the game. It'll be out on Steam in a year or 6 months or whatever. You know.
But like the thing that's even crazier about that specific example is that that's literally just people being annoyed that they'll have to have it like open on a different program.
Right.
Like, you're still using your PC. Like, you've been using your PC for years and having to open different programs to do things. Like, it's not like you just open Steam and now you can completely control everything on your PC from within Steam. Like, no. Like, so what if you've got to have an Epic, you know, game launcher there to then play Borderlands? Or like you said, if you're really that fussed about it, just wait until the exclusivity deal runs out and then buy it on Steam. Like, it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Do you not feel that reviews and reviewers and critics, though, are kind of it's always a subjective field, and that part of their, I don't know, that they, I'm not saying they lack integrity, but part of their existence and for them to get to the top of the chain inside their own field is to have a quirk about what they do and how they do it, and they have to be very careful as to what that quirk is. So it could be equally quirky to review bomb and put a low score on a game that should be rated really high, as much as it is you know, too much of a punt not to give a 9 or a 10 to the next Legend of Zelda or Grand Theft Auto. You know those games are going to score a 10 even before they've even started production. And then there's the kind of the next bit as well. And I mean, I'm sure Greg can tell us a little bit more about this from being from the developers side. And I take this to, you know, my professional world. I've been encouraged to talk to analysts, which for all intents and purposes in my world are reviewers, in a certain way to give them what they want to hear, so that they either A, positively review my product and my company, or more importantly, B, don't negatively review. And I'm kind of having to go against how I want to talk, what I want to promote. I'm kind of having to play the game, and I feel it very much is a game. I've always felt that. And, you know, that's to say, when you've got something that's ultimately subjective, you know, how can someone realistically, and I don't mean, how can someone, I mean, how can someone tell me what I'm going to enjoy? How you know, what, if you don't have a kind of a scale by which you operate? I mean, look, there's something near and dear to your heart at the minute, Zach, hurricanes, right? Hurricanes have.
Here I am.
Here he is. They have a defined scale. You know, a defined scale. There's no argument.
1 through 5, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. People don't come on and go, it's a bit blustery out. I think it looks like a Cat 3. Well, that's not how it works. You know, there's a definition of a scale. Whereas if you've got 2 or 3 or 4 people playing a game, the latest video game, it's in their opinion based on criteria that they may choose to use a lot or a little. I don't know. What do you think from like a developer's side? You know, do you have to? Well, what are you allowed to say?
I love what you guys are doing. You're like,
yeah. For the benefit of anyone listening, not watching, it's because we're sharing a little a pair of earphones.
We're sharing headphones, just
so we're on a string.
That's right. Yeah, we can't move too far away or we drop out. Again, you guys have said a lot of things, a lot of really interesting observations. Pretty much all which I agree with and could talk about from my perspective, any of them. This latest one that Justin is mentioning about reviewers having their own agenda, you know, and then developers or, you know, people in the industry trying to cater to that agenda so that you can maximize your review and your score is a real issue. It's a real thing, and it can often be extremely frustrating in a number of ways. One, maybe not so much trying to cater to them, because I think you can, and I have made the choice to not care about that in interviews and feel like, okay, my passion for what I'm doing will win the day. You know, it's a conscious choice. And I've had PR companies that I work with who will, you know, or publishers and their marketing departments who will explicitly want to coach you before you go into interviews and say, these are the points you need to hit, and this is what the market wants, and this is how we'll get, you know, better score. And you can do that. You can listen to all that, or you can say, oh, I don't care. I'm just gonna speak from the heart and hope and expect that will sort of shine through. Even so, you know, people have so many, they come at it with their egos and their ambitions within their reviewing and their reputations within the reviewing community. And it's kind of a mess. You know, I've always had, even from the very early days, kind of a love-hate relationship with the gaming industry. And that's one of the areas where I've often felt a lot of frustration. And then going back to some of the things you were saying, Soren, with the general entitlement that we all see if we're looking in our culture in general, in modern American culture and maybe European culture too. You guys can speak to that, but I can say for sure here, and how that extends into the gaming world, you know, and people getting all pissy about things they think they have rights for, right? And reviewers getting
Game of Thrones, man, is a perfect example of the
it's ridiculous.
What a crazy, oh man.
Sorry. No, and you see an awful lot of that, I think, especially in the gaming world, the gaming community, and in both the fan community and in reviewers. It's kind of rampant. I gotta say, I don't mind negative reviews when they're thoughtful. And so far we've been talking about reviews mostly as a score, but it's worth saying that the really meaningful and helpful reviews are the ones that really talk about why they're saying what they're saying, right? And if somebody is very critical, but they're very thoughtful about it and talk about how they thought it could have been better and what choices they thought were made and why, and what it is they appreciated about it as well, then I enjoy seeing those reviews of my game. I never mind that. It's when people just go on a rampage about one particular thing, like you were saying, right? They'll pick one little tiny thing, focus completely on that, forget everything else. Yeah, and that's just hard and painful to see. And then likewise, if somebody does a great review, right? They give it a game score 10 out of 10. Well, when it's your own game, you're always happy, right? You're never going to be bummed at that. But when I see that for other games, notwithstanding people scoring games they haven't played yet, that's just absurd and plain out not right, stupid. But when you see scores that feel like they're kind of over the top, I actually never mind that if they're passionate about something and they talk about why it struck a personal chord for them, and then great. You know, I guess I just want to put a little counterpoint to that concern about raising expectations. I think you can take a review in context and look at why somebody loved it and still go, okay, well, it might not be for me, but that's awesome that you hit your spot, you know. So I said a lot there because we'd already said a lot. So I was trying to go backwards and cover a bunch of ground, a bunch of points that we
to take it back to Toejam Earl again. Sorry, I have to keep doing this, but
no worries.
And I've probably told Greg the story before, but he probably doesn't remember. But when I was, you know, before I bought the original Toejam Earl, or before my grandma got it for me, I should say, I saw the review in GamePro magazine, and I used this review in my video I made. I during one of the segments, I had the review there, and the review was positive. However, you know, remember GamePro had that rating of hot, great, good, fair, poor, whatever, and they had the faces, you know.
Yeah.
Toejam and Earl got a good in the fun factor, which was a 3 out of 5, and that was always a red flag for me with games. I'm like, ooh, I don't know about that, but I got the game anyway. I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna get it because they say it gets boring or whatever, but whatever, I'm just gonna get the game anyway. And what a crazy, and for me, like, it just seemed it seemed ironic and crazy that a game that, you know, still that I've played for almost 30 years now, the fun factor was rated, you know, a 3 out of 5, and like Greg said, it's a numerical score or whatever. But I don't know. I just think it's just funny. I don't think those guys had an agenda or anything, but it's just interesting to look back on it in that way, you know. And you know, I still tend to ignore reviews for a lot of things simply because I want to make up my own mind, you know. And obviously,
it's like we were saying about it being subjective, you know, like it is. Like anything like this is absolutely subjective.
Yeah, it is.
So, you know, what one person really likes, another person might not. Like, there's some guys that I watch on YouTube where they say about, like, you know, when they look at game reviews and that, they kind of basically ignore any reviews that are at the bottom end or the top end of the scale. So whatever scale that is, it generally is a 10 out of 10. Ignore all the ones, ignore all the 10s, because they're going to be all the people that, like, really super love the thing or really hate it for whatever reason. And it's all your 2 to 9s. Everything in there is going to be people that generally will have a more detailed explanation of why they either like it or don't. So you're going to get kind of a more accurate feel and an idea of what the game is from those reviews, and then you'll know if it's one for you.
So can I build on that? Because, and this goes back to what you were saying, Justin, about like the hurricanes and having an absolute criteria, you know, theoretically, which would be kind of nice if you're going to look at a number score and compare numbers and the problems with that because of that subjectivity. But if you take a step back, right, and you look at all of the games, sort of the array of game types that are out there, some are more, lend themselves to being more subjective than others. For example, whenever you do anything new and outside the box, people are going to have a much wider range of opinions about that, right? If you're doing something that's just straight up another version of the same type of game everybody knows, but you're executing on that really well, and you're focusing on stellar graphics, well, it becomes very easy to rate that and compare it with other games. And then if you look at the things that are new and you say throw humor and satire on top of that, well, that's extremely subjective, right? And you already know some people are going to love it and some people are going to hate it. And one of the problems that I feel like I've seen, and Justin and I were just talking about yesterday, was when you have games that lend themselves to being more subjective, reviewers are more at risk when they're putting themselves out there and giving something a high score. So it's much harder to get a high score when you're doing something that's outside the box, unless it's already got a huge following, you know, like maybe Undertale or something, or unless it's got amazing graphics like Cuphead, right? Even that, like mechanics-wise, that was pretty standard game, but the graphics were stellar. And so as a reviewer, it's pretty safe to go stamp, I'm going to give that one a 9 or 10. And you look around, you go, okay, no other reviewers are going to slam me for that, right? But something like Toejam and Earl, which is just like people look at it and they either love it or they hate it. It's weird, it's different, and they go, I don't even know what this is. And oh, look, it's supposed to be funny. And oh, look, there's like ethnic, cultural stuff in there. And, you know, you know, you're at risk as a reviewer So if you're giving those a high score, so that's one of the things I feel like I've seen, and it's frustrating for me because I'm interested in stepping outside the box, and it's sort of a price you got to pay as a developer. You kind of got to be ready to say, okay, I'm not going to get 9s or 10s on any of my games. You know.
Yeah, and then you mentioned cultural references and things like that. I'm sure you guys have noticed there's a trend now. I don't know if it's, I don't want to get political, but I don't know if it's since the last election or what, but it's like people seem, you know, if anything, this applies to movies and games, obviously, in any form of entertainment, but even games, like if there's any sort of, you know, for example, CD Projekt Red, the company that did The Witcher, and they're doing this game called Cyberpunk 2077, right? So they made their character creation system. They're making it so that you can create so that your characters are non-binary, so they don't identify as male or female. So you can make them look any way you want, you know. So basically, everyone will have the opportunity to make a character that represents them as closely as possible. Well, guess what? Huge backlash. You know, it's like people are like, why? You know, like I said, I don't want to get too political with this, but it's just people will, you know, they'll go and give it a 1 score just because of that one issue, you know, even though it has nothing to do with gameplay, nothing to do with anything about the game, you know. That trend is very real right now, you know, and it's not just for games, it's movies. You know, if there's a movie that, you know, has a certain message or even maybe even just one character that does something somebody doesn't like, you know, they'll bomb it, you know. So I don't know, it's troubling. It's a troubling trend that I've noticed, and I saw that trending the other day about Cyberpunk, and I was just like, oh man, you know, I'm like, it's a character creation screen, who cares, just make the character you want, you know, and don't worry about, you know, that sort of thing.
But I mean, to be fair though, Zach, like, you know, I don't think this has completely died out, and I know this was a bigger issue like several years back, but there were a surprising amount of people that had literally never played like a Tomb Raider game because they can't get their head around, like as a male, they can't get their head around playing as a female protagonist. It's like, to me,
that true? Is that true?
There are people
there are people, but the thing is, look, internet age, there are people. Do you know one real life person that you actually know who you would consider an acquaintance at worst who went, nah, I never picked up Tomb Raider because that's a bird, can't deal with that? Really? Because I don't.
To be fair, like, no, but then...
Well, exactly.
I've never played a Tomb Raider game, but it wasn't for that reason.
Yeah, okay, it's Zach. We found him. There it is, Zach.
Yeah, but there's not, like, so the kind of people that would have that attitude wouldn't be in my friend circle. So but I've seen people online, and I totally get that, you know, like, yeah, when, you know, people can absolutely be keyboard warriors, and, you know, their online persona is very different to how they would be in real life. But I have seen people, you know, in comment sections and things like that, just having a total issue with like a Tomb Raider game because they're like, I don't want to play as a girl.
Comment sections,
like,
man.
Really?
Yeah, but then I've seen a ton of backlash from people who they've gone, well, people only played that game because they spent the whole game looking at a bird's ass.
Yeah,
brilliant.
Yeah,
you can't win, can you?
I have a friend who will remain unnamed, who said he always plays as female characters because he would rather stare at a woman's ass for hours on end than a guy's, you know. So
and for the benefit of anyone listening, unfortunately Derek can't be here tonight.
Poor Derek.
Oh, sorry, Derek.
For me personally, I only play female characters when it's that's the game doesn't give you a choice, you know, the female character. But it's not because I hate women or something. It's just because I like to make a character that is like me, you know, and that's where the whole that's where the whole Cyberpunk thing bothered me so much, because I was like, okay, they're trying to give everyone the opportunity to make a character like them, whether they identify or male or female or non-binary, whatever. So why be angry about it when you can create the character that is like you? You know, it's just one of those things where, and I understand there's people that have different perspectives on this, but
it's also when it's optional like that as well. I mean, at the risk of making our podcast a bit too political, it was, I'm sure this was something that came up. It was either The Witcher or Mass Effect. I'm sure it was one of those where they did this whole thing about, like, because they announced that you could form relationships with kind of like pretty much any of the characters.
Yeah, male, female, gay relationship, straight, whatever.
Yeah. And I remember there being like granted it was probably a very small, subsection of people, but there were a group of people that had a massive issue with the fact that you could, as a male protagonist, enter into a gay relationship. And it's like, hang on, even if you aren't okay with that, or you don't like that, or you don't want to do that, you aren't forced to do it in the game. It's just
it's a choice.
It's there, yeah. It's a choice. The option's there for people that want to do that.
Yeah, the BioWare games have always been good about that. It seems like they were, the original Mass Effect you could do it. The Dragon Age games you could do that. Yeah, but you're right. It's a choice. It's not forced upon you.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, I don't know. What do you think, Greg? Do you have any thoughts on this particular topic?
Yeah, sure, I do. I think that, like you said, to sort of referencing the political situation, not just in this country right now, but kind of in the world at large, there's a lot of frustration out there, right? There's a lot of people who feel unempowered and angry about a lot of things that are happening in the world that feel unjust, and it kind of sits there inside of people, and especially a lot of young people who are particularly angry, a lot of young gamers and internet users, and so I think a lot of that negativity that comes out where people are attacking one specific thing in a game that they kind of latch on to might come from a good place of people feeling like they're freedom fighters and wanting to make a statement, and feeling like they're seeing some kind of injustice that they want to rally against, and whether it's kind of coming from the left, where people are saying, hey, you're not portraying this ethnic person the right way, and then they get on a bandstand about that, or even when it's coming from, in some cases, like from the right, like the example you gave, Soren, because that's kind of where I imagine that coming to the side, that coming from, right, where people being offended that they have the choice to have a gay relationship in a game. I think it's really misplaced, it causes people to become very censored, self-censored. You don't want to ever put your head up and become a target. And so the end result, despite whatever people may want, the end result is it makes the game industry become very vanilla. Developers and marketers, they don't want to be targets. They don't want to do anything that's going to make for negative press. And it's so volatile, it's so risky, that what you end up with is a lot of a very strong pressure not to do anything that touches on culture or ethnicity or any kind of political issue or anything that people might actually enjoy explorations in. And it's unfortunate. I found it really, really frustrating as a developer to feel like it's a scary thing to step out.
Yeah, that's an interesting way of looking at it. Yeah, I didn't think of the whole, when you said vanilla, yeah, that it makes the game industry more vanilla. That's true. Because of this, especially now with outrage and backlash culture that we have, you can't do anything without someone getting upset, and it's really just a matter of how upset people are going to get. It's not if they're going to get upset. It's
right.
What level are we going to take this to? Is it going to be the Game of Thrones final season level, or is it going to be like I don't know, something less extreme than that? Yeah, that's
that's very true.
Yeah, pretty crazy. So, all right, final thoughts, gentlemen.
Here you go. I'll have one quickly then. I was just thinking back to talking about being subjective and talking about that ultimately the ultimate reviewer of any game is yourself, right? You will know whether you like something or you dislike something yourself rather than being told. And there's the way of doing that, I suppose, the cheaper way, if possible, is to try and get a demo, go play, have your own thoughts, and away you go. Or I know me and Greg were talking about the success of Toejam and Earl early doors coming from the rental market. Well, the rental market doesn't exist anymore, not really. And that, ironically, is my backstory with Toejam and Earl is that we actually rented it. We actually rented a Mega Drive for the weekend, and
the whole console,
and a bunch of games, and that was my chance to play 3, 4, 5 games. I mean, I was very young at the time, and that ultimately plays into that. If you have the time and the desire, and it was probably easier back then as well because there wasn't this huge catalogue of games. There wasn't. I remember a time where the lists would come out, and it was, this month these are the 6 releases for the 16-bit consoles. You're like, oh, that was it. Well, now, of course, things are turning out every day. And there's so much out there that I guess you kind of are guided. But yeah, the reality for me is if you can, it's easier said than done, is, you be the reviewer of everything. Give yourself a chance to go and delve in and see what you think yourself. And I don't think there's any other way around it because it is ultimately subjective.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, go on, Greg.
Oh, thanks, Soren. I was just going to say I would love to add to that, you be the reviewer, as a kind of general plea to both fan reviewers and professional reviewers for humility and for positivity. That I feel like we need more of both of those things in our world in general, and that the avenues that people have to reach out and touch other people is more than just a place to get on a pedestal and get attention. It's an opportunity to touch people's lives with those two things, with humility, which is the opposite of entitlement, right? It's appreciation, and it's an understanding that there are a lot of perspectives out there, and you can look at something from a lot of different angles. And positivity of, again, feeling like even in some of the worst games, we were talking about ET, right?
We were.
Yeah, right. And that's a great example.
The quote unquote worst game of all time, right?
That's the racer.
Right. And I didn't really know much about the story of that, and Justin was educating me the last day or two about that, and it's fascinating that they had about 8 weeks to make that game, and when you learn that, all of a sudden, one guy, 8 weeks. Yeah. You learn that, all of a sudden you go, oh my gosh, that wasn't the worst game. That was an amazing achievement, right? You go, that's kind of mind-blowing. And so, even in a review where people are slamming it, you'd kind of hope somebody would go, wow, applause to this guy for operating under the tremendous pressure he must have been under for like this top franchise to deliver in 0 time, and what he pulled off. There's always something to appreciate, is my point, if you look for it. And I love it. I love it when I see reviewers that do that find find things to applaud. So that's I think my list.
Soren?
So yeah, kind of off the back of something Greg mentioned just there was about the, we do kind of have to tread a very fine line between coming off or sounding like we're entitled. So like, where some of these people like review bomb or do things like that, and it's like, no, because I'm angry because I'm not getting what I want. But the kind of flip side of that is it can, at least for some of the bigger publishers and bigger companies, it can actually be a force for good. An example of that is this was from a couple of years ago now, but Shadow of War, which was one of the Lord of the Rings games. Now that's the second one in that kind of series.
Yeah, there was Shadow of Mordor, right?
Yeah. So Shadow of War, when that launched, it was kind of, I mean, they didn't. It's not like they kind of hid it and then just dropped it on you, but like because they did mention it before the game released. But the game released, and we knew it was going to have microtransactions in it. But the microtransactions were so intertwined with progression in the game, and it's not like you couldn't progress without them, but they'd actually made the mechanics way more difficult, like almost to the point of if you've, I forget what the name of those games are, but those mobile games that are kind of, a lot of them are time management, and it's like, well, you can wait 24 hours for this thing to be built, or you can buy some gems for $2.99, like, and speed up the process. It was kind of almost on par with that. It was like, well, look, you can really grind through this game and and go and get all the money and the bits you need and build your army up, or you can buy this microtransaction where you'll get like a really powerful hero for your army. And so they'd kind of geared it in a way where you weren't forced, but you pretty much were. It was like, well, I'm not going to, I'll need to play this game for the next decade to actually get anywhere with it. And so in that situation, people started review bombing it and really giving out about how terrible this was. And it actually forced the publisher to, have a chat with the developer and be like, right, yeah, we need to, this is horrendous PR. We need to completely change this. So I think they fully removed it all. So now if you go and play Shadow of War, I don't think there are any microtransactions in, or if there are, they've drastically changed how it affects the game. So, there can be review bombing can be used for good, yeah, but it's such a fine line of, just don't let it cross into that where you're starting to come across as entitled. And like, just one last thing, which I absolutely need to get in before we wrap this up, it's the unhelpful reviews. Most common place for this is Amazon, in my experience. And I haven't got a problem with this, where if you order a game and it's delayed, or it turns up and the box is damaged and it's broken, you absolutely deserve a replacement. But when you 1-star review the game, somebody comes along and goes, oh, well, this game is clearly not good. No, your experience with the order was bad. Like, you're not one.
There's a difference.
You need to understand.
Between game quality and shipment quality. Yeah,
exactly. Stop 1-star reviewing something based on, the fact that Amazon might have like sent you a dodgy package that got bust or whatever.
Right. Yeah, that's definitely a problem. I would agree. Okay. All right. Thank you, gentlemen. I don't have much to say there. I think you all summed it up pretty well. So, Greg, thank you very much for being with us. We very much appreciate it.
Sure.
We will just call you friend of the show. And on behalf of Soren Day, Justin Day, I'm Zach Smith. And that's it. We will see you next time. We are the GameFellas. Later.
Yeah, that all sounds good. Sure. Okay. Yeah, the only thing Justin told me so far was that he says interesting things, and you and Soren try to come up with something for that interesting. So, I think I'm ready.
I'd love to say he's making that up, but that's absolutely factual. So, yeah.
I should call it budget meeting. This is the handoff meeting where our old office manager is telling us things we need to know.
No, Soren's got his rat.
I've got
rat tail. I got my rat right there.
There he is.
Hey, we've all
the rats.
Oh, okay.
What are their names?
Rick and Morty.
Oh, Rick and Morty.
Yeah.
Of course. Oh, you said Greg's cat too. Oh,
we got one of Greg's.
Oh, there's one of the cats. You guys understand, if you sit like that the whole time in post, I'm going to have to put something between you guys.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to be moving far. So